Hello DC fanatics, welcome back to yet another marvelous video. Today, we have something extra special in store for you. I'm sure you must have heard that the world of the DC universe is about to change very soon with the onset of the first chapter in DCU known as Gods and Monsters. The lineup for this is so extravagant that James Gunn and Peter Safran have decided to leave even the geekiest of DC fans in shock. Well, as part of this lineup, we are about to witness the birth of an amazing superhero team for the first time on the big screens. They are known as the Authority, and they represent the morally gray area of justice. When you look at this team, you will be shocked by the level of powers they possess, and amazed by the way in which they handle it. That is exactly what we are going to explore today. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Now get ready to find out everything about this DC superhero team that listens to no one but themselves. Let us begin. The Authority origin story. Before we get into the details of how exactly this team came into existence, let me first remind you about another DC superhero team. This team operated on a much larger scale, since their job was to fight against any extraterrestrial beings causing havoc in any part of the world. They were known as the Stormwatch, and they were funded by the United Nations. Stormwatch was created as a global peacekeeping force, comprised of several smaller divisions of superheroes to look after different levels of threats against the universe, like war situations, covert insertion, or even mass destruction. They operated from their satellite headquarters, known as the Skywatch. Now, in the events of the second volume of the Stormwatch comic series, we find out that the Skywatch is destroyed in order to save the world from an infestation of xenomorphic aliens. Along with that, those aliens actually ended up killing the majority of the superhuman staff at Stormwatch. In the end, the only people who were left alive were Jackson King, who is known as the Weatherman, Flint, and the Stormwatch Black Team members, Swift, Jack Hawksmore, and Jenny Sparks. So, now that barely a handful of people from the Stormwatch were alive, and there was no Skywatch, the United Nations realized that they could not afford to run this group anymore. This is why Stormwatch was officially shut down. Here is where the story of the Authority originates. You see, as the only Stormwatch subdivision still alive, the Stormwatch Black could not just sit idle knowing that there was no one out there to save the world, so they went underground for quite some time. We then see them in the first issue of the comic series titled The Authority. It came out in 1999 and was created by Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch. We see a mass-scale destruction occurring in Moscow, Russia. Back in New York City, overseeing all the information regarding the Moscow attack are Christine Trelane and her husband Jackson King. They both were leading officers of Stormwatch, with Trelane as the faithful retainer and King as the second weatherman. They struggle with the fact that there is no international superhuman crisis response team. Just when Jackson starts to lose his cool, an interdimensional portal opens up and we meet Jenny Sparks of the Stormwatch Black. We also find out about the person responsible for the Moscow attack. It was none other than Kaizen, Gamora of the brothers Sum, Y, and Kaizen. In his greedy goals, Kaizen killed both his brothers, Sum and Y, and became the sole ruler of Gamora Island, which was formerly known as Parousia. His attack on Moscow was just the first step in a series of 3 attacks that he had planned for Earth. He was also aware that the Stormwatch no longer existed, and he had a bone to pick with them, so he found it best to attack their precious Earth and kill innocent people, because 2 years ago, the Stormwatch attacked Gamora, and Kaizen's citizens died. The difference that he failed to see, of course, is that they were literally the bad guys, not the Stormwatch. A vital piece of information is that the Gamora clan has a symbol, which is a circle with 3 dots. Kaizen wants to mark his symbol on Earth, because anything that bears this symbol belongs to him. So, Earth is the circle. Moscow is now the first dot. Jenny takes all the information that Jackson and Christine have on the Moscow attack and promises them that there are people who will take care of this. These people that she refers to are the Authority. After the Stormwatch shut down, Jenny Sparks, along with Jack Hawksmore and Shin Le Min, found a couple of superheroes who would make a great team. We then soon meet these superheroes living in a ship known as the Carrier. It is actually a shift ship, which can move through the interdimensional plane of existence, known as the Bleed. Basically, the red space that exists between the alternate universes and the multiverse of Wildstorm/DC. Jenny found this ship in Earth's orbit, which is powered by a caged baby universe, and then it became the headquarters of the Authority. After meeting Jackson and Christine, Jenny goes back to the junction room of the Carrier, informs Swift, also known as Shin Le Min, and Jack about it, and then asks Jack to personally visit the attack site in Moscow. At the same time, we also meet the other superheroes in the Carrier. Jenny gives all the information to Angela Spica, also known as the Engineer. Then we meet the Doctor, also known as Jeroen Thorndike, and two other superheroes, whom Jenny calls the dynamic duo, Apollo and the Midnighter. With that, we have officially met all the 7 members of the Authority for the first time. In the Carrier Mission Control, we find out that in Moscow, Jack found the residue of a teleportation effect. When the Engineer traced it, she found that it was the signal from Gamora Island. And now the same signal was appearing in London, England. This means that our superheroes had figured out the next place of their attack, in London. Kaizen Gamora's engineered super soldiers had already started destroying everything when the 7 superheroes arrived. Apollo as the Sun King, Midnighter as Night's bringer of war, the Engineer as the Maker, the Doctor as Earth's shaman, Jack Hawksmore as the god of the cities, Swift as the winged huntress, and Jenny Sparks as the spirit of the 20th century. Together they fought against these enemies, and we officially got to see the Authority in action. After an exceptional battle, when Gamora's men escaped, the Authority returned to the Carrier, and were soon able to figure out their next point of attack. The final place was Los Angeles, which would be the 3rd dot in Gamora's symbol. This time, the Authority had an upper hand, so they managed to stop Kaizen Gamora before any real damage was done. In the end, the Midnighter destroyed the superhuman clone factor on Gamora Island with the help of the Carrier. Who are the members of the original team of the Authority? Just like most superhero teams, there have been several times over the past years when new faces have joined and old faces have left the Authority. But we will get into that some other time, because for the most part, the Authority has had its original members. So for now, let us look at all 7 original members of the Authority from when the team was first created in 1999 and find out some of their special qualities. Jennifer Sparks. Jenny was born in England in 1900. If you are trying to do the math, then you got it right. She has actually been alive for 100 years now, and you might find this shocking, but her godfather was the Albert Einstein. After the age of 13, her powers actually started to show, and by 19, she had absolute control over electricity. So basically, she can shoot bolts of electricity, travel through the power lines, and even shape electricity however she wants. She is known as the spirit of the 20th century and actually affected several incidents that made history. She then died the moment the 20th century ended and the 21st century began because her spirit was no longer needed. Jack Hawksmore. His full name is John Cooper Hawksmore, but as a superhero, he is known as Jack. His powers work in extremely mysterious ways, and I am sure you have never seen anything like this before. So, as a kid, Jack Hawksmore was constantly abducted. He thought it was the work of some aliens, but in fact, those were certain highly advanced scientists from the future, and they were sort of remaking Jack's body in order to develop him to save the world when the time came. So, with each abduction, they would remove some organ from his body and implant a weird technology. Eventually, Jack realized that the power these things gave him was to be able to interact or become one with the city in a rather unique manner, so he can basically talk to cities, even the bricks, buildings, or streets, and ask them to do the things that he wants. If you ask me, that is just downright insane. As a result of these powers, he came to be known as the King of Cities, or the God of Cities. He used to work with Jenny Sparks, and they were both previously part of the same team, Stormwatch Black. Shin Le Min. She has a genetic quirk in her body that got activated one day when a comet passed through Earth. Now, there were 2 things that could happen. Once such a quirk has been activated in any person's body, they would either manifest their superpowers naturally or need the help of special seedlings, known as activators. Shin Le Min's superpowers were only partially activated due to the comet, so when she joined Stormwatch Black, along with Jenny and Jack, she was just a rookie and comparatively less powerful than her team members. But then, Christine Trelane helped her fully activate her powers, so she can fly like a bird due to her powerful feathers. Her claws and talons are sharp and can be retracted, and she also has superior hearing and eyesight. Angela Spica. People lovingly also call her Angie. She is one of the smartest kids in her family and has 6 older siblings. From a very young age, she was always obsessed with superheroes. In fact, she also wanted to become one. I guess young Angie would have never thought about what the future had in store for her. While growing up, she was also the smartest kid in her class. Other kids her age would be playing and goofing around, but she was building circuit boards. Imagine that. So naturally, she became an engineer. Now, her fate as a superhero began when the first engineer died. This engineer was a part of the team known as the Changers, which was led by the High. When he was killed, all of his nanotechnology notes showed up on Angie's computer and got linked to her research in a human-machine fusion. She used this to change the blood in her body with 9 pints of liquid machinery of nanotechnology. This gave her the liquid metal that covers her body and the superpowers of being able to fly and create solid objects out of her own body. So this is how she became the second engineer and was recruited by Jenny to become one of the founding members of the Authority. Jerome Thorndike. This man was basically born extremely smart. He became a multimedia millionaire at the age of 12. Yeah, you heard that right. And by the age of 20, he had also become a billionaire. But with that came its own struggles. The level of fame and fortune he had received led him to have a severe nervous breakdown. It was so bad that he ended up giving away all of his money. He wanted to live a simple and ordinary life. But then the original doctor, who was also a part of the Changers along with the first engineer, died. After his death, Jerome became the Doctor, who is also known as the Shaman of Earth. He now possesses the power of sorcery, which has been passed down from a long line of previous incarnations of shamans. So, at the moment, he is the most powerful sorcerer out there. When he received these powers, he just chose to ignore them and dive deep into the pits of heroin. But soon, Jenny and Swift were able to convince him to join the Authority. It involved a little suicide attempt by Jenny, so that the Doctor felt compelled to save her and got persuaded by her in the process. Midnighter. We do not know the real identity of the Midnighter before he became a superhero, because the process in which he became one completely erased his previous identity. It used to be part of one of the subdivisions of the Stormwatch, known as Stormwatch Zero. It was created by Henry Bendix, who was the first weatherman. The team operated a little differently, which is why no one else except Bendix knew of its existence. When they were sent on their first mission, the entire team died except for 2 people, Midnighter and his boyfriend Apollo. Due to this, both of them went underground and started fighting pesky good-for-nothing villains in an alleyway in America. Basically, they chose to stay away from any life-threatening battles. This lasted for about 5 years, after which Jenny convinced him to join the Authority. The changes that Bendix performed on Midnighter made him a violent and ruthless vigilante. So, using his powers, he is able to find out the outcome of a situation before it even occurs. He also has telescopic vision and enhanced hearing, among other abilities. I guess it's a good thing that he chose to become a superhero. Apollo. His fate was pretty much similar to his partner, Midnighter. Even his previous identity was erased after Bendix gave him superpowers by bioengineering him. So with these powers, he receives super strength and even heat vision. But that is just where it starts. Apollo basically gets his powers from solar energy. This means that his powers are dependent on the sun, which is why he is also known as the Sun King. After the destruction of the Stormwatch Zero team, he also went to America with Midnighter and was recruited with him by Jenny to join the Authority. Notable storylines of the Authority. Now at this point, you might have already realized that the Authority does not follow typical law and order. No one asked them to figure out Kaizen Gamora's plan and save the world, right? They did it on their own because there is no government that funds them, not even the United Nations. Unlike Stormwatch. Since the Authority is a self-funded superhero team, neither do they take orders from anyone, nor do they respond to any other higher authority. So let us now look at one very interesting story where the Authority had to clean up the government's mess. In 2004, a special limited comic series was released titled Coup d'Etat, which was created by Jim Lee, Carlos de Anda, El Garza, and Whilce Portacio. It ran for 4 issues and explored a crossover event in the Wildstorm universe. In the coup d'etat events, we find out that for quite some time, the government of the United States has wanted to figure out a way to access the bleed and explore it. But the Authority is aware of its risks, which is why they have warned the government multiple times to stay away from it. But soon, their negligence gets them into trouble because a superhero turned supervillain named Tao, a previous member of the Wildcats team, tricked them. He left a phase engine for the government to find, through which they could easily enter the bleed. They ran tests on it multiple times, but they just could not resist using it to see what all the fuss about the bleed was. So without enough knowledge about the mysterious phase engine, they launched it into the bleed, and the result was worse than anyone could have ever imagined. The engine ended up opening a rift into the bleed. This led to the destruction of a shift ship that was nearby, and this shift ship was way bigger than the carrier. Due to the rift, the broken parts of the shift ship started to fall on the state of Florida and practically destroyed it. The Authority could not do anything except save the civilians who were still alive and reduce the speed of the ship's descent to minimize some damage. But this is not where it ends. Along with the shift ship, its angry inhabitants were now able to enter our world. These passengers were a unique species of giant-sized people known as the Vigil. They obviously wanted a war not just against the government, but the entire Earth, because in their eye, the whole planet was responsible for what happened to them. So the Authority had to step in. They found the people who were responsible for this mishap and staged a bloodless coup. They then took control of the government of the United States so that the Vigil could be at peace and there would be no interdimensional war. During this time, the Authority also changed several laws, like enforcing gun control and even nationalizing some oil industry. The events of the coup d'etat comic series did not end with its last issue. In fact, they continued into another limited series that was published later in the year 2004. This comic series is titled The Authority Revolution, and the creators are Ed Brubaker, Dustin, and Richard Friend. It ran for over 12 issues and ended in 2005. In the events of the Revolution, the control that the Authority had over the United States of America was challenged by several old superheroes from the 1940s, 50s, and even 60s. They formed a team and called themselves the Sons of Liberty, since their only goal was to safeguard America. Now, nobody knew this at first, but the person calling the shots for the Sons of Liberty was not their team leader, Paul Revere. They were all basically following the plan laid out by an old enemy of the Authority, the first weatherman known as Henry Bendix. Several things happened after this, because the Sons of Liberty managed to gather even the citizens who are against the rule of the Authority, and together they staged several riots in Philadelphia. In the midst of all these issues, the Midnighter receives a rather special visit from a very old Apollo who has come from the future. He shows him the future of the world if the Authority continues to remain in power. Upon seeing this horrifying sight, the Midnighter knows that there is only one solution, and that is the discontinuation of the Authority. Well, it soon ends up happening, because a huge battle broke out on the lawn of the White House between the Authority and the Sons of Liberty. This battle led to a wide-scale destruction of Washington, D.C., so the Authority took responsibility for this damage and decided to step down as rulers of America. Soon after this, the team was disbanded. But worry not, because their story does not end here. A lot of things end up happening in the lives of all the 7 members of the Authority after they go their separate ways. In fact, it is even believed that the Doctor, Jerome Thorndike, dies of a drug overdose, but in reality, he was murdered by yet another superhero working for Henry Bendix, known as Rose Tattoo, who literally came back from the dead. Eventually, the Authority came back as a team due to the efforts of Jenny Quantum, the adopted daughter of Midnighter and Apollo, and the successor of Jenny Spark. This time, their common enemy is Henry Bendix, since he is the person responsible for the team's breakup and the death of their beloved shaman. Marvelous verdict. Well guys, with that we have come to the end of yet another marvelous video. All the storylines that show us the Authority in action are worth a lot of praise. This super team is truly one of its kind, and I don't know about you, but I'm dying to finally see them on the silver screen. I am sure James Gunn and Peter Safran will do justice to them, but only time will tell. All we can do for now is wait and hope for the best. The Authority surely ties up every loose end, and they do not allow anyone to run rampant. After all, they literally took over the whole of America because the government was doing disasters. That was definitely my favorite part from their storyline. So, what are some of the things that were your favorite about the Authority? Is there any particular team member whom you love the most? What are your opinions about its soon arrival on the big screen? And what other things from the DC multiverse do you want to explore? Let us know all about it in the comments down below. And if you like this video, do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button on your way out. It means the world to us when you help us grow. Until next time, guys, it is goodbye.